Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from shiny Berlin. I am Catalina and I will talk to you today about teaching sustainability with AI. My objectives are to get you to reflect on your position regarding AI in education, to get you inspired by a practical session with AI on sustainability, and to get you to consider talking about sustainability no matter the subject you teach. So before getting to the practical session, first we will understand a bit the AI landscape and the risk connected to AI. What's AI and education, how they are connected, and what's the connection between education and sustainability. We start with the AI landscape. How does it look today? Well, there are lots of technologies connected to AI, such as automation, robotics, machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, generative AI, and for the purpose of this talk, we will focus on generative AI. Before going forward, I would like you to scan the QR code that you see now on the slide and to answer short questions on your viewpoint, your attitudes in relation to education and AI. Thank you very much. What's generative AI? Well, the primary function is to generate content. What type of content? Visual media, text, speech, audio, code, industry-specific content, cross-industry content. And according to CB Insights in March 23, this is how the landscape looked like, with text being only the highlighted area. And I'm saying text because we are going to focus only on generative AI for text. And in April, however, this is how the landscape looked like according to Jeremy Summers on LinkedIn. Highlighted area being text. So things are moving very rapidly in many different domains. Everything started with OpenAI releasing ChatGPT in November 2022. It took them 5 days to get to 1 million people signed up. By comparison, Netflix needed 3.5 years to get 1 million users, and Facebook needed 10 months. And all the others then follow suit, with Microsoft releasing and integrating Bing in all its products, Google releasing Bard at this point only in some countries, Baidu releasing iMate, and Sberbank in Russia releasing GigaChat. What do those generative AI models do? Well, for example, Bard, which is set to be released in the whole world soon, has voice and image input, has internet access, and can generate text and export it, summarize web pages, generate multiple versions of the same answer, explain code, plan your trips, and many, many things. And you can get the idea that everybody will follow with the same features. What are the risks of generative AI? In order to answer this question, we first need to understand how do large language models work. And I'm saying large language models because generative AI is based on these large language models. These are deep learning models that are trained on massive amounts of text data to generate or predict text. For example, GPT-3, which is the LMS for ChatGPT, has 175 billion parameters and is trained on 45 terabytes of text data. What does that 45 mean? Well, if we assume a book has around 300 pages, 1,000 characters per page would be 150 million books or 300 kilometers of bookshelf space. So how do large language models work? On text, with text. And they try to predict the word that comes next based on the context it has, much like autocomplete. And that means that currently, at least the unpaid versions, don't know what they know. They don't have an understanding of what they say. And this brings us to hallucinations, one of the most talked risks related to generative AI, a confident response that may sound plausible but is either factually incorrect or unrelated to the given context. When asked what is the world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot in February, ChatGPT answered 14 hours. When I asked it again last week, it answered there is no world record. So it's a model that is it's hallucinating, but is continuously learning. Also, when I asked him to give me an example, he said that he generated a news article that contained false information about a fictitious researcher. And moreover, he reflected that actually that's an error and not a hallucination, because hallucinations are dependent on sensory perception and those are related to humans. The unpaid model still has a weak logic. If you ask him the duck problem, the answer is 3, but the chat says 5. And I asked ChatGPT what are the risks of generative AI, and it listed several of them: bias, misinformation, privacy, unintended consequences, malicious use, intellectual property infringements, dependence, security, ethical considerations. If you want to understand a bit better the part with risk, I definitely recommend you to watch AI and the Future of Humanity, the talk of Yuval Noah Harari, and also the talk of Tristan Harris and Azar Ashkin on the AI dilemma. Now we are at education and generative AI. Generative AI in terms of education has an immense potential. If you're considering that individual tutoring has the chances of getting the highest learning results. Khan Academy is currently working on Camingo, a tutor for education, where you can have different sections with Tutor Me, Practice, Explore a Subject, Engage in a Debate, Interview a Historical Figure or a literary character, Craft a Story, Build Vocabulary, Navigate Admission and Finances. Related to this, I encourage you to watch Sal Khan's TED Talk. Other universities are following suit. For example, International University is developing Synthea, and edX just integrated a learning assistant into its platform based on ChatGPT. What's the connection between education and sustainability? Well, I hope everybody agrees that education is focused on the future. We are teaching, training our students, our participants today in order to be prepared for what's coming in the future. That means we should be talking about sustainability no matter the subject we teach. Why? I will only give 2 reasons. We are producing an enormous amount of waste, and the CO2 emissions reached record high in 2022. In Denmark, they placed these banks in order to make the effects of CO2 emissions more visible. And this brings us to the last part of my talk today: practical sessions, sustainability with AI. And if you say, oh, I'm teaching math, what sustainability have to do with math? Well, I went to ChatGPT and asked what kind of topics can I teach in relation to sustainability when my main theme is math. And the answer was, you can introduce carbon footprint, and then went on to give some more details. The practical session that I thought about is focused not on carbon footprint, but on the SEG framework. So how would the session look like in very few words? We have introduction, as always, with communicating the objectives, understand the SEG framework and its importance, identify key environmental and social principles, use AI-generated text tool to answer questions, and reflect on the AI results. As always, the session should start with an energizing, like touching green, in order to get the participants active. Section 2, what is SEG and why is important? Here, divide the class in 3 groups: environmental, social, and governance. And there is an individual phase in which each student is connected to ChatGPT and asks questions in order to understand the concept assigned to her group, and to find an example. And then in small groups, the students discuss the findings and agree to a common explanation. Then in the big group, each small group explains one of the 3 pillars of SEGs, and then they reflect on the importance of SEG. And then comes the reflection on AI, the differences and similarities that they have noticed in the answers received from AI. Section 2, which are the key SEG principles, start with small group activities. Students go back to the groups they were previously and they look for principles. And now the idea is that at least one student should come up with the principle with no materials, one should use Google but no BARD, and one should be using AI in order to see what principles are key for the SEG framework. They come back to the big group and explain the key principles of the area they are focused on, and then they reflect on the easiness of generating content using different methods, and also on the confidence they have in the accuracy of the content they got. Finally, you summarize the key takeaways. The students reflect on what they have learned. They think about how they can apply the knowledge in what they do, and you address any concerns or questions. This brings me to my final point. What I want you to do now, what I want you to take from this talk is a reflection. I want you to reflect on your stance in relation to AI in education. How could a practical session look like? And also to consider talking about sustainability no matter your subject. Thank you for your attention. In case you want more articles or to continue the conversation, or you didn't get the chance to answer, please scan the code and get in touch. Thank you.